morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever it is that you're with us today. Katya and I are going to be walking through education and the Canadian Startup Visa Program in today's webinar. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about what's going on in the world, because there is a lot going on in the world, as I am sure everybody knows. I wanted to touch on, the key destinations that we all know and hear about with regards to education. The US has to be mentioned here because, as we know, there is so much going on in the country that means that international students are continuing to be quite anxious with the type of screening, the impact that the visa interviews and the delays that they're facing. We're seeing a real drop in numbers, which is very interesting. Something like 40% are reporting that students are actually going away from the USA to other countries. So for Canada, this is good news. But we know that 9 out of 10 students interviewed recently by one survey are actually worried about their visa status. So for students, this is really a concerning time, although the education in the USA is still absolutely superb. There is certainly a trend at the moment, which is creating anxiety among students, which benefits other destinations that we're going to be talking about. Australia, again, a very popular country for international education, but again, we've seen an increase in fees. The visas and university tuition fees have been increasing, and there have been changes around visa rules, cost of living, and there's a sort of well-known housing shortage in Australia, which means, again, it's complicated for international students. The other thing that's really interesting to see is the emerging study destinations that we're seeing. The UK, as we know, is another very traditionally popular higher education destination, but we're seeing places like Europe, particularly Japan. That's not in Europe though, is it? Let's start with Germany. Germany, Spain, France, and the Netherlands certainly gaining a lot of interest. We've got Singapore, South Korea, and Japan, and then of course the UAE, both for schools and universities, which are really becoming attractive to international students, very much because there are more and more courses taught in English. So it's an interesting option, sometimes a lot more financially interesting than some of the bigger destinations. But let's focus on Canada. Now, again, Canada is an interesting situation too. We know that there are caps. We know that about 10% fewer caps than in 2024, because they're really trying to control the number of students coming in and, of course, the quality that is being delivered here. We're seeing a decline in new students. This is really quite clear. Something like 50 to 60% less or fewer students in 2025 to 2024, and this is because of tighter policies and higher refusal rates. And this is a trend that we're seeing in certain countries, and not just, as you see in Canada. We've got lower approval rates. Those are currently down 50% on previous years. So again, it's definitely impacting mass market applications. However, interesting, there was a new budget that was recently released, and the way that the finances were distributed clearly shows that the country is looking for high quality profiles. So for those students who are considering doing masters or PhDs, certainly they're being prioritized. Then you've got the post-graduation work permit eligibility. That, again, is being aligned with labour market relevant programs. So not all courses are being treated equally. So all of this means that guidance is really important when working with students who are looking at Canada, because it still very much offers an absolutely outstanding experience and possibility of work after graduation. But it's just getting into the right university that's initially a challenge sometimes. So we're here to talk a little bit more about what we can do and how. So one of Henley's indexes that it produces is the Henley Opportunity Index. Now, this is very, very valuable. We work a lot with students who come to us for advice on education and destinations for their children. And this very much is a question of how a country is situated in comparison to others. Now, we can see that Canada has a total score of 74%, which is wonderful because we can see that it doesn't just look at one area, but a whole area, from earnings to careers to employment to education, safety, all the things that parents look for when they're considering a destination for their children's education, but also for a move as a family. And you can see how Canada actually compares with other countries here. It's doing very well. It's 73, 74%. Its earning potential is strong. It has wonderful education, as we know, and it's a very interesting area to go to. So if you go on to Henley Global, if you're interested in comparing various destinations and see how Canada scores alongside either where you live or other countries that you're considering, absolutely, please do have a look. Now, I'm going to try and change a slide if my mouse wants to work, which it doesn't. There we go. Let's have a look at Canada. I've just realized 5 minutes into our webinar that I haven't actually introduced myself, so it might be a good idea to do that. I'm Tess Wilkinson and I'm Director of Education Services at Henley. So I lead a team of many counsellors who advise globally on students who are moving around the world to either universities or schools. Now, if we're looking at Canada, these are very much, there are two pillars in Canada. You've either got universities or colleges. Universities traditionally far more academic with research, they have cooperative education, and then you have the colleges far more career orientated. You've got stackable credentials, which means you can go from certificates to diplomas to degrees. The interesting thing here are the co-op options, because basically what that means is that you have universities and colleges that allow you to study and earn work and work at the same time, often leading to better career options afterwards and higher salaries. You've got the universities that will traditionally deliver bachelor's, master's, etc., and professional courses. And then you've got the colleges that have undergraduate and postgraduate diplomas and certificates. So we got all sorts of different ways of going through the higher education in Canada. Now let's have a look. Where are people going and where are the best universities in Canada? You can see here on the map, there are 15 research-intensive universities spread across the country. And interestingly enough, that's where 80% of Canadian universities' research and development are. They've got great rankings, strong alumni, as we've talked about, cooperative and industry links. And the big universities like the University of Toronto, McGill, UBC, they're all part of these wonderful universities that students are going to and learning. Now, let's have a look. We've got Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, all very different areas. Now, Katya, who lives in Canada, can give far more information about these areas. I live in Portugal, very different place to live. But in Montreal, you've got universities such as McGill, Concordia, HEC, and the University of Montreal. Then, of course, in Toronto, you've got York, Sheridan, the University of Toronto, and in Vancouver, you've got the famous UBC, Capilano, and Emily Carr. So a real range of universities across the country. But those are the really well-known ones. Places like UBC, Toronto, McGill, everyone's heard of those. But there are many other great universities in Canada that are well worth exploring. So when you are working with a counsellor who really understands the universities there, the whole role and the whole purpose of this is to understand the students' needs, their aspirations, ambitions, and then match a course with the university for them to consider. And they aren't just the big names. So it's our job very much to introduce potential options as well as the big universities. So let's have a look at the difference in fees for university. Now, average tuition for Canada is about $30,000 US, but you can see the difference with the US and the UK. The work permit for 3 years, UK's 2, the USA between 1 to 3, but we know that these may change. And then it's got a very, very high safety index. So it's really a wonderful country to live, for students to go graduate from, get jobs, and really enjoy their work. So what does it look like? Canada is actually extremely simple. Unlike places like the US, where you have to write essays and you have to develop your profiles, Canadian universities are great because all they really care about is the grades that you get. They're not that interested in whether or not you are part of different volunteering groups, or you've been playing professional chess, or you're doing. That's not really what they consider. They look at the grades. So you can see the sort of grade levels that they're looking at. The higher the degree, the your high school diploma, whatever it is that you're studying, the better and the more options. International students need to have either IELTS or TOEFL scores. You can see IELTS, it's between 6.5 to 7 plus, TOEFL between 90 and 100. Now, SATs and ACTs are not required. Many are optional. We often give advice to students who are coming in as international students to consider doing the SAT or ACT, simply because the university recognizes it. And it's a way of sort of giving a level playing field to everybody according to where, and it doesn't just depend on where you come from. They recognize that. And then, of course, you've got your activities, they do some courses, as I've said, not all of them, will look at some of the leadership and initiatives that you've done, but the majority, it really is the grades. If you have the grade and there's a lot of competition for the course, then they're going to be starting to look at this sort of these sort of activities that you do. But it's very much do the best you can, get the highest grades you can, and that's what the universities are fundamentally looking for. Now, if I get to this one, I've changed this. We were going to be talking about 2026, and I've just realized it's really far too late to do a 2026 entry, because you'll see right at the bottom that really all the deadlines are coming up now. So it's, if anyone's considering Canada as a destination, it's really a 2027 entry that would be the soonest you could look at. So when you're planning, and we really love to plan with students as far in advance as possible, especially if a family is considering doing a Canada startup visa alongside education, which is very common, because A, it takes away the international student status if it's done a long enough time in advance, which means that many of the difficulties and the caps are not going to be relevant. So we tend to try and work with students a couple of years out. So in grade 10 and 11, start visiting universities, look at what you should be studying, look at your supercurricular activities, and then you start shortlisting your profiles, your programs. You start developing your portfolios and making sure that everything you need for your applications are ready. In grade 11 during the summer, and then in September and October, make sure all the test prep's done if you're deciding to do it and if it's required by the universities. And then, of course, you start looking in grade 12 around researching and shortlisting your courses in your universities. This is very much what we do with our students. We help them identify the best possible course and the university to study it in, because many families will know a university and they'll be very highly ranked and say, we want that university if possible for our child. But actually, very often it's course that you should be looking at, not so much the university, although usually they go together. But if you can get the best course, it's not necessarily in a the highest ranked university. Then, of course, you've got all the applications that have to be submitted in fall of grade 12, and then all the coaching around any scholarships that need to be applied for, any essays finished, interviews done, etc., etc., etc. So it really is a very sort of streamlined timeline for Canada. And as I said, it's one of the more simple applications. Now, the difference between the different scholarships and co-op opportunities. If we look at scholarships, there are two types really. One is grades-based, and that's completely automatic. So if you can qualify, you can apply for this type of scholarship if you are really high achieving. They'll be the universities will reach out to students and say, yep, your grades are good enough, we will allocate this scholarship. Then you've got the application-based scholarship, which of course is far more complex and more competitive because you have to submit essays, you need to go to interviews and make sure that you really shine. If you can get a full scholarship, well done, because they're rare, very, very competitive for obvious reasons. But it's important to understand that scholarships and admissions are not linked. So you can still apply and go to the university even if you don't get the scholarship. I've talked a little bit about co-ops, but they are really great options for many students, and both universities and colleges offer co-ops. Interestingly enough, University of Waterloo has the largest global co-op program, which is an interesting one to consider if you're looking at a university. But then you've got others, and University of Alberta has the highest graduate employment rate, and average earnings, if you've done co-op, is between 45 to 65,000 Canadian dollars a year. So it is really something to consider. Have a look at universities or colleges that do that. Then, again, when you're talking with us about, or your child is talking to us about what they want to do, what they're hoping to achieve from their university journey, because it's much more than just the academics. We know, any of us, I've got kids who've gone through university. Yes, the academics are important, but it's other things as well. We want to sort of be able to really experience it, and different people have different wishes. So, you'll see here that there are different, we've listed, if you're looking for innovation, Waterloo, Alberta, Concordia, etc. If you're looking for a very international, bilingual culture, then you've got other universities that will tick that box. If you want something that's more applied or vocational, then you've got George Brown, Seneca, business, research, etc. So there really is a different type of environment in these different universities, and understanding this is key to ensuring that the child who studies here, the student, really gets the most out of their time in Canada. Now, come on, it's working. Now, at this point, I'm going to hand over to Katya, who's going to talk about Henley and Partners. Katya, over to you.
Thank you, Tess, and thank you for that insightful information about education in Canada. I'm going to be talking about Henley and Partners today, but before I do so, I just wanted to also give a little bit of information on the what Tess just shared. Me as a former international student, I can reassure you about the quality of education in Canada. I went to McGill University, and I can again reassure you that Canada offers many opportunities to students, and it is long-term plan and a positive plan for the future for anyone considering Canada for academic purposes. So now on to Henley and Partners. We are working not only as part of experts in the investment migration field, but we also offer government advisory from one of our branches of services. So we are the experts on the field. That has led us to have over 60 offices worldwide, and we have over 25 years of experience and leading experience in the industry that has led us, like I said, to provide more than 25,000 clients with advisory on residence and citizenship options via investment migration, and we offer services in 40 plus options or country programs, one of them being Canada. That, like I said, we have over 60 offices worldwide. One of our main offices is actually in Montreal, where I'm based here in Canada. But we have offices in Europe, like Tess was saying, she's in Portugal. We have offices in the Caribbean, Latin America, Asia, and we're constantly growing and expanding just to make sure that we have all the experts in the field and all the information. We work with partners, service providers all over the world. And if you ever are around one of our offices for a consultation, just make sure, reassure you that we do have that possibility. like I mentioned, we are the leading partner in investment migration. What is investment migration? Because I'm going to be repeating that for like a couple of times. It is we're a country, in this case, several countries offer or have programs to attract foreign high net worth individuals into the country, and in return, for their investment in their countries, they can either opt for a permanent residence or a citizenship pathway to remain in the country, or to obtain an alternative plan. It is important to know that the investment varies from country to country. It could be funds, investment, real estate, and our client advisors are the best to guide you through the best options in the process. Also, like I mentioned, we have over 40 programs that we offer for investment migration all around the world, same as our offices. One of our main programs is Canada and North America, but we also offer different options in Europe. Like Tess was mentioning, Canada is one of the main options for education, but we also offer different options. So in case Canada is one of your options, or your main option, there's always the alternative to find possibilities in Europe, in Australasia, in Asia, or even the Caribbean, and we are here to support you in the process. It doesn't have to be just Canada, it can be um, more than Canada or an alternative. So now, talking about Canada, Tess has provided a lot of information about the education system, but Canada itself is the second largest country in the world and is also one of the wealthiest. It's part of the OECD, sorry. It is regularly voted as one of the best countries to live in. It's very safe, as our index show and reports show constantly in the latest reports as well. Canada is a bilingual country, so either if you speak English or French or both, this is the best place for you to be in. And also, there's a place for everyone. One of the key benefits about Canada is the high standard of living, like we already mentioned. It is an excellent place to do business with access to the entire North American market. It is ranked on our Henley Passport Index on the top 10, with the possibility to access over 180 destinations. We will talk about the benefits of the permanent residence and the citizenship pathways through the Canada Startup Visa program. Um, and most importantly, since we are discussing this, it is a very affordable country with high quality education and healthcare, which makes it very attractive to our clients and anyone that wishes to have a lifelong plan for the future, for their family, or for their own self. And lastly, but not least, it is a multicultural country, so everyone is welcome in Canada. It's a very tolerant country. And again, it has very vibrant cities. I myself am in Montreal, like I said, but cities like Ottawa, Toronto, and going further in Alberta, there are uh, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, if I may say so. So now going into what Henley and Partners does, which is investment by migration by investment, it's the Canada Startup Visa program. This is one of the many programs that Canada has, and one of the most popular because it is because of the profile. It is targeted to individuals with skills to build businesses in Canada with innovative ideas. And what does it require? What it is based on? It is based to create an innovative startup, and you have to obtain a letter of support from one designated organization. Whether you already have your idea or whether you want to create a new business, we are here to help you. One of the main requirements, like I just said, it's the letter of support. We get it from one of the designated organizations, and Right now, there are two different paths, which is the priority path and the regular path. It's very important to mention it because the priority path has been selected by the government to give more attention for the upcoming goals of the government. So we are looking at a little bit of a difference, and the main difference is the processing time with angel investor and venture capital, which are priority, and some of business incubator are priority, but those are mostly on a regular path. Other than that, similar to what Taz was saying, the level or of language proficiency for the startup visa program, it is a level 5. So if you do count with English or French on CLB or IELTS, you're more than check on that requirement. Also, good health, there are some requirements throughout the process that you have to go through health assessment just because this is a permanent residence program. And finally, to have sufficient funds to settle and live in Canada. This is accounted as whether you come as your own or you come with a family of 4. So it's yourself and other 4 family members. So you would have to prove that you have at least 25,000 Canadian dollars just to make sure that you can include your family. And on the processing time, which is what I was mentioning before on the priority versus the regular path, as some of you may know or have heard or read on the news, there through the transparency commitment from the Canadian government, some processing times can go up to many, many years. However, if you do go through the priority processing time through Angel and Venture, the designated organizations, the processing time is still between 24 to 15 months, which is around 2 to 5 years of waiting on the whole processing time. You may say, Katya, well, this is a long time to wait. So if you are looking to move to Canada sooner than the processing time allocated, there is a possibility to obtain a work and a study permit before you get your permanent residence approval. This is done simultaneously with the permanent residence application, and it is usually issued within 4 to 6 months. And I'll talk a little bit later on the processing timeline. The permanent residence is a 5-year permit, which you can obtain after the waiting time. The only or the main relevant information about the permanent residence is that you need to maintain a minimum stay in order to renew your permanent residence. And this is important because it will lead you to the path to citizenship. Right? So the requirements are basically to remain in Canada a physical presence of 730 days within a 5-year period. And that goes on to the eligibility for citizenship, which is 3 years or 1,095 days of physical presence in Canada out of the 5-year period. This is important just to make sure that you consider this for your future plans and for your children, which the program is usually very attractive to family with young children that are looking to obtain this citizenship. What is the process? Like I was mentioning, we help you from A to Z. From the preliminary assessment that we do, we will require you to provide just a little bit of information about yourself and about what you've done in your work experience as a main applicant, just so we can make sure that you have all the elements to make sure that your startup is successful and passes all the filters, and also that we get the letter of support. In that sense, the startup creation has 2 options. It is either creating a new startup from scratch, whether you, like I said, you have already an idea or you want us to help you out with the creation of a startup, or we can even pair you with another eligible startup founder. And just to mention that each startup has up to 5 applicants per startup, and this is important because it's the main applicants, right? So if you are a main applicant with us, you can include up to 4 family members. And just as a little bit of a side note, there are some eligibility criteria of which family members can be included. Children up to 22 years old can be included here as a dependent. Older than that, they would have to be their own applicant. But again, we can discuss this specifics with a client advisor and our business partners that can help us out figure out your own situation. After creating the startup, we submit to a designated organization and have access to an incubation program. We will require you to take this incubation program just to make sure that you understand the business culture in Canada and to set up your startup for success in the business culture in Canada. After that, you obtain the letter of support from a designated organization, and then we are ready to submit the application for the permanent residence, along or in parallel, if you would like, with the work permit or study permits as it corresponds. The timeline for this, like I said, it varies depending on how many applicants and if you already have an idea or not. But the initial assessment takes about 1 month just to make sure that we have all the information and we guide you through the correct pathway. The startup creation from A to Z, it takes about 1 to 3 months. After the creation is done, we have all the plan, we submit to the designated organization. The incubator program then goes on to happen from 2 weeks to 4 months, depending on the training that you choose. And then the finalization of all the business package with all the requirements, it takes about 4 weeks. Then it is issued the letter of support, and we can then submit the application for permanent residence and or alongside the work permit. The issuance of the work permit, some people have this question. It takes about 4 to 6 months to get the work permit authorization, and just be reminded your physical presence is counted for maintaining your permanent resident status. And the issuance, again, the 24 to 50 months from application date is approximately 24 to 50 months, but for the priority designated organization pathway. Other than that, it will take a couple more years just to make sure that you have that information. And the investment itself, along with the fees, the cost is from 215,000 to 300,000 US dollars, including all the fees and investment part.
Unmute myself. Thank you, Katia, for explaining that. Please, I know that Katia dropped a message in the chat. If you do have questions, please don't hesitate just to write them in, because you're receiving a lot of information, both about the Canada Startup Visa and, of course, about the education in Canada. I'm going to go through Henley and Partners education a little bit. Won't spend a huge amount of time. Just talking through how we support our families and what we do. So Henley and Partners education offers really 3 main areas of service. One is our sort of cornerstone, I'd say, our foundation for everything we do with families, which is the Henley Academic Profiling Assessment. What that allows us to do is to benchmark students against international students. And so basically, when we're assessing a student's academic ability, it isn't just based on what's coming from schools, but we have this that clearly benchmarks children. So we have the same sort of data wherever they may have studied in the world, to present to either schools and to assess which universities are best suited to their academic ability and potential. Of course, our main area is school and university admissions counselling. We have a team that provides global counselling, and I'll introduce them in a minute. And then, of course, a range of additional services depending on what our clients are looking for. So our wonderful team here. Not everybody's on here. I ran out of space when I was doing this slide. But as you can see, we have people who are working all over the world. We have Trevor, who lives in Canada, Maria, who's based in India, but they are both Canadian university specialists. But with the whole team, we cover universities and areas from North America to Australia to New Zealand and Asia, the UAE, the UK, Europe, Switzerland. Everyone in our team are either ex-head teachers or teachers. We have special educational needs specialists. Myself, I'm a teacher by trade for many, many, many years before working for Henley, and have worked in international education. So we really have a huge amount of experience, understand students, understand children of all ages, and know that we have been working like that across the board. Now, Henley and Partners Education, we're really proud of one particular thing, and that's our 100% success rate that we hold to date, because we are looking at students, and we work with families so closely, but when we're looking at universities or schools for them, we know really what will match them well, because that's what we're all about. We don't just introduce a student to a school or a university. We want to understand the child. They're all different, and we want to ensure that we help them get into the best possible school or university for them. And to do that, it means that we have no financial partnerships with any schools or universities. So we're completely impartial, working for every single child and for their family. As I said, we use data from the HAPA. That really helps us to match students to universities and schools. And most importantly, by working alongside Katya and the teams around the world at Henley, we are able to offer a very unique service, which is to help students to actually graduate with both a degree and residency, and in some cases citizenship. So the Canada Startup Visa is a very good example of this. When we're working with students, when we're talking to families, if they come, we always say, parents often say, so Tess, when should we start talking to you? We've got a child of 10, 11, 12, 13. And I say, the earlier the better, because if you can plan in advance, you really can open doors for your child. And by allowing your, to plan, for instance, with Canada, the Canadian Startup Visa, if you're planning far enough in advance, and you know that Canada is certainly part of the plan educationally, and as you see, the fee that and the cost of the startup visa can include up to 4 children. That can therefore allow children to enter universities not as an international student, not necessarily paying international fees. So you can save a huge amount of money on fees by doing the startup visa anyway. So there are lots of conversations that we have with families to explain the options to them. And that really sets us apart from many other education advisors. So I think with that, that's probably all I need to cover. I think one other thing, as I put us onto the Q&A slide, that I'd just like to say is that, many parents will say, oh, and students will always aim for or know very well-known universities. I mentioned this earlier, and will say, oh yes, McGill or UBC or elsewhere around the world, Ivy Leagues, Oxford, Cambridge, whatever it is. And I just really want to stress that we work with children of all ages and all abilities. We have a special educational needs team, so we can work with children with special educational needs. We believe that there is a right educational environment for each child, and we will ensure that each child finds the place that they can thrive. So that's really what we do. Thank you very much. Now, has anyone got any questions that they would? Suad's contact details are up here, but Katya, I'm sure we'll be able to reach out if you do contact Suad, and my details are here. But yes, please feel free to ask any questions.
I don't see any questions at the moment, but maybe I can jump in with
Sure.
some generally asked questions about
Mm.
Canada. Usually, the main question that we get on the application itself is who can I include in my family
Mm.
application for Canada and who I cannot. So, there's no age limit for the main applicant. So, let's say you have you are interested in the Canada Starter Visa program, there's no age limit. We've had clients from 25 all the way to their 60s for main applicants. However, there
Mm.
is eligibility criteria for dependents. Like I mentioned before, if you are looking to include your children in this, and I think jumping on with Tess was saying, the earlier the better, because there is an age cap for children dependents, which is younger than 22 years old. Right? So
Mm.
if they are 22 or older, unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to qualify as their dependents. However, they can be included as another founder or they can create their own startup visa. But this
Mm.
at the outset, well, it's not immigration advice. We work with partners and strategic service providers and lawyers in Canada just to make sure to assess your individual situation. But it is very important to make sure that we have all your history and make sure to meet your goals as a family or as a main applicant. And also, the second question on that is, can I include my parents, grandparents, in-laws?
Mm.
Unfortunately, no. This is a program that is not focused on or doesn't admit parents, grandparents, and in-laws. However, like I said, they can be included as a separate application or founder. It's just important to make sure that we have all your history before we provide any specific immigration advice with our partners.
Thank you, Katja. Thank you, everybody. As there are no more questions, we'd like to say a huge thanks for spending time with us. Anyone registered for the webinar will receive a recording in a few days' time. Please don't hesitate to take down our contact details. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we'd be absolutely delighted to jump on a call with you and discuss your plans for Canada. So have a great morning, evening, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you very much. Thanks, Katya.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.